there's obviously been a lot that went into this decision. A lot of people look at it as a rushed move because obviously, the administration did a great job of keeping that information in-house. But this was a well thought out move. Obviously, there have been studies done in the past that we referenced, and there were even studies done here recently that our administration referenced to show that this was a quality move for our athletic program and university moving forward.
Hey everybody, it's HBCU Game Day. It is a breaking news Thursday. FAMU is headed to the SWAC. We got some people in the know right here on your screen. Vaughn Wilson, he's our inside guy at FAMU, and Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, he is our SWAC correspondent. You two guys are just about to have some overlapping territory here. Vaughn, I want to start with you. On campus, you are connected. Just last week we were like, this isn't going to happen. And then this mysterious PDF pops up on the website and all of a sudden is full go. FAMU to the SWAC. Your just kind of initial feeling about this move.
Well, it's funny. I interviewed FAMU AD Courtney Gaucher last week for the piece that I wrote for HBCU Gameday. And my takeaway was the last statement that he said. He said, FAMU is fully focused on competing for a championship in the MEAC in 2020. By putting that year on there, it kind of tipped me off, and I know he didn't want to tip his hand, so I went with it. Sometimes you have to, as a journalist, when you have that access, you can abuse it. But he did end it. So I wrote what he said, and he ended it with, in 2020. So as I went back and looked at it, I kind of figured something else was in the works. He never did say, we aren't looking at the SWAC. He just said, for 2020, we're concentrating on being a championship team in the MEAC. And obviously, since January, as the chairman of the Board of Trustees mentioned today, they had been communicating with Dr. McClellan at the SWAC. Other presidents from other universities within the SWAC had been communicating with Dr. Robinson because, of course, FAMU would have to pass a vote of the schools in the SWAC to be admitted. Several schools contacted Dr. Robinson already, FAMU's president, and told him, hey, if this happened, we support you, and we would like to see this happen. Meanwhile, as AD Courtney Gaucher was working his magic and working up the numbers, once it leaked out, the FAMU nation went berserk. So many wanted this for so many years, to be honest. It just did not happen, and it's probably due to the instability at FAMU in the athletic director's chair. Several ADs over the last decade or so. So there was never anyone in a stable position to actually make this move. What Gaucher used was not only his own survey that he had done by a consultant in 2020, but when I was on staff at FAMU, we did one at 2014, which concluded the exact same thing that the one in 2020 concluded, that the MEAC presented a budget challenge to remain in there because of the location of the schools. And it created a problem with time away from school for the student athletes. So when those two things came together, it made it easier for everyone to kind of pull the trigger on making the move.
Dr. Cavill, a new big brand in the SWAC. I mean, it's not like you didn't have enough, but now you get one more. How does FAMU fit into the lexicon of all the big brands in the SWAC?
I think it fits in perfectly when you talk about the brand of FAMU. If you force me to say what are the top 5 brands in HBCU sports, it would be hard for most to leave out FAMU in that top 5 in any category. And most would say 3 of the other 4 or 5, if not 4 of the other 5, are from the SWAC. So you're just bringing in significant brands within the SWAC, which creates a unique brand of the SWAC matched up with FAMU. So it's perfect in so many different ways. As Vaughn talked about, historically, from a historical matchup, there's always been this interest, if you would, with FAMU and the SWAC. When you talk about just quickly a review of the history going back, when you started seeing these changes with FAMU looking to move out of the SIAC, the SWAC is a conference talking about moving up to Division I, or at that time called the large school capacity. The SWAC was not in Alabama. Then you had Alabama State come in '82. Tennessee State goes to OVC in the mid '80s, '86, '84 time frame. And at that time, you had FAMU moving into the MEAC as it was trying to start up. Well, you fast forward, there's always been that interchange. FAMU's look independent, going FBS Division I at that level, looking at the SWAC. These studies were out there, but the synergy never was all together. And it seemed like now you just had this perfect storm with everybody just seemed to say that it made sense. The numbers make sense. The fans supported. The bands make sense. The regionality with SWAC now being firmly in Alabama with Alabama State and Alabama A&M, helping that regional connection that reduces travel out of the MEAC. It makes sense. With the conference churning of the MEAC and teams leaving the MEAC, that helps for it to make sense in that. So everything was lined from top to bottom in just about most ways that it made sense. So I think the SWAC people are excited. And FAMU, with the brand it has and the attitude it has, I've seen it fitting in already as people have kind of anticipated. And so you see on the various levels of social media platforms, if you would, already that robust exchange is going back and forth between the bands, the football teams, the basketball teams, even the baseball teams, which is big in the SWAC. And FAMU has revitalized that program. So across the board, and we haven't even got into some of our more Title IX sports, and certainly on the women's side with volleyball and softball, that's going to be dynamic when you start looking at the particulars of just participating within the sport. So it's fascinating. And now people are already talking about what is the next step. So it's just really crazy, if you allow me to use that phrase, in so many different ways, and people are truly excited on this side of the block, if you would. Welcome, FAMU, Florida A&M University, to the SWAC.
And Vaughn, the name that just keeps coming out, and because I guess they just played and it's so fresh, FAMU and Southern. Do you think is that going to be the new rivalry there?
That rivalry is a rivalry if you drop it on Mars. FAMU and Southern, there is something amazing about those dynamics. I mean, let's take it back to 1978. Let's go back there. FAMU in the first FCS now, but it was Division I AA playoffs, had to face Southern in the semifinal round to get to the championship round. And that was a battle. And it was a close game. I can't remember the score, but I think FAMU won by maybe a field goal. And so FAMU and Southern, even before then, the Jake Gaither era, FAMU and Southern have always been a rivalry. You take it back to a couple months ago in Tallahassee, 27,000 people in the stadium. It was bigger than homecoming. And partially that was due to FAMU playing well, Southern playing well, the bands at the top of their games, and so there were so many, and then FAMU and Southern hadn't played much since the demise of the Atlanta Football Classic. So Southern is a natural rivalry, and I'm glad Doc mentioned baseball too, because FAMU head baseball coach Jamie Shoup, who won the MEAC baseball tournament a couple of times. The first time he won it, his assistant coach was Brett Richardson, who is now the head baseball coach at Alcorn. Right. And so many things like that intertwine between FAMU and schools in the SWAC.
Dr. Cavell, I'm wondering, does the SWAC need another dance partner with adding just one, throwing an oddity in the equation, so to speak? Or is this just the juice worth the squeeze and they'll figure it out down the road?
No, once this became serious, obviously it was a no-brainer to do whatever you can to provide a platform that would allow Florida A&M, FAMU, to come in transitionlessly, if you would, and if they made the move to accept them, which I believe the SWAC presidents and chancellors, along with the AD from the SWAC commissioner office, will do pretty soon. You don't be surprised if somehow if it's actually done today or tomorrow. With that said, when you look at how smooth this is, I think from what I'm hearing is there's going to be a desire to get to 12 really quick. And they'll make it work at 11. They have to, but the desire, my understanding, will seek to get to 12 so they can continue with the divisions in not only football, which we already see exists, but if you look at the NCAA governing rules, you really need 12 teams to split basketball in divisions, which will further help what is taking place with FAMU in the traveling, which obviously will help the rest of the SWAC schools as well. The other sports are pretty much divided in divisions. Most recently, I think SWAC talked about playing maybe an entire schedule, but certainly that will be revisited in regards to how you look at baseball. But for the most part, from all indicators that I'm getting with all those involved at the leadership positions, they want to quickly go to 12. So don't be surprised once this is finalized that the talk turns around in terms of whoever the SWAC will engage to become a 12th member. So that's going to be the next domino to fall to see how far that goes and who will have interest and who they will have interest in. So we've kind of heard a little bit about that talk back and forth, but I think that's going to be serious in a lot of ways. And just to revisit in terms of what Vaughn said, that Southern rivalry between FAMU for the longest was the longest inter-conference divisional rival that was out there. And as you talked about the playoffs, when FAMU won the national championship, Southern played them early in the season, actually, in terms of they gave the Classic to get in there, but it was Jackson State, which is another rival that FAMU has played just a couple of years ago, both home and away. That was actually the semifinal game that they beat in a rival, and Jackson State hosted that game, and they've always been biting off the tooth, thinking that national championship was theirs. So you have that dog and pony show already going on in FAMU will quickly remind you that we don't need any of that revisionist history. We won the game, and we won the next game. So we were and are the only HBCU to win a FCS Division I national championship. For the fact, Prairie View played in the first one at the NAIA level, but they lost a close game as they played for a championship at the NAIA level.
Well, guys, we got some more voices to add to the conversation in the 2 minutes that we have left here before we bring on Stephen J. Gaither and Wally Pitton. We're going to hear from some members of the Board of Trustees as well. Vaughn, just touch on this quickly. Where does the MEAC go? This will now be the third defection in as many years.
Dr. Dennis Thomas is going to have his work cut out for him because a few years ago, changing from Division II to Division I, it costs about $1 million to do that now. And so that's going to be prohibitive from schools. And to be honest, if schools are looking to move, they're more likely to move from Division I to Division II. We saw that with Winston-Salem when they came to the MEAC and realized, Division I was not all that. We were competing better when we were in Division II. And they've, in sense, their program is thriving once Bill Hayes got back there and helped get the athletic department back on its feet. It's done tremendous in track and football and those types of things. So the commissioner will have his work cut out for him. The health of the schools within the MEAC and what those schools are actually thinking is a big factor. Just like Trustee Morris says, in the Board of Trustees meeting, we have to think about our university and making budget. So when she said that in the trustees meeting, that let it be clear that, we want to go out and have fun with the schools that we're familiar with, but the financials is what motivated her to vote yes for FAMU to move from the MEAC to the SWAC.
Well, we're going to keep this conversation going. I imagine it would be the topic of the summer. But for now, I will let you two gentlemen go and enjoy your day. And Vaughn, you got more people to chase down. And Dr. Cavill, you got to make some room for some more subject on your radio show. So, guys, thanks a lot for hanging out with us. And we'll talk more about this in the days and weeks to come.
Anytime.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Let's talk quickly now to Kim Moore. She's the vice president of the Board of Trustees at FAMU, a big part in the decision over the last couple of days. She joined us just a few minutes ago. Let's hear what she had to say about the decision. FAMU headed to the SWAC.
So when you looked at the budget and overall the benefit that would be garnered from that, we look at the expenses and we certainly looked at the revenue opportunities. It ties into our current mission of making sure that we have a sustainable and self-supporting athletic program. All of that, it touched on each of those areas. So we were very glad to see that. Again, I think the bigger, not even bigger, but the question that some of us had was just making sure the transition was a seamless one and that everything that we had on our checklist and wish list that we would be getting as a result of making that transition. So that was probably one of the things that I think that probably set it apart, but certainly not something that would allow us to not make the decision that we made today. And I think everybody walked away from the table, being a virtual table, being very happy with the decision that we made.
Okay, welcome back to HBCU Game Day. We're still discussing FAMU headed to the SWAC. We got some new voices to the conversation, familiar faces, familiar voices. Wally Pitt, Stephen J. Gaither. Wally, let's start with you, man. You're just first reaction the last couple of days, and when it really, we knew it was going to happen yesterday, FAMU on the way to the SWAC.
Man, I love it. When it was just a rumor, there's so many rumors that fly. It was just like, yeah, that might be cool. But, once we saw that document, PDF was like, this is being addressed. It became real. And frankly, I love it. It does make sense for the travel. When you look at the map, I'm one person, I often talk about this. When I went to Tallahassee to do my internship, I was like, oh, Florida would be sun and fun. But, Tallahassee is really far off the rest of that Gulf. It's really close to Alabama. When you really look at it, geographically makes sense. On the football field alone, to have them play Southern and Grambling, it just, I love it. The only thing I don't love is that I don't live close to the action. I know there's still some nuance to it, but first responses, I love it. And man, 2021 signed me up, booked my bus, my train, my rental car. I cannot wait to see FAMU. And Willie Simmons, who's got some ties to the SWAC. Man, I think it's gonna be fun era.
Stephen, I'd be interested to hear what you think, but let's look at the other side of the coin first. What does this move mean for the MEAC for the third year in a row? An upper tier program is leaving that conference.
Yeah, a big blow for the MEAC. It's been well chronicled the troubles that they've had keeping the conference together the last decade. And so, to lose A&T over to lose Hampton was bad. Lose Savannah State, yeah, you could kind of maybe see that happening.
Oh, I forgot about Savannah State. I wasn't even counting them. Oh, God.
Yeah. But, you lose them, you thought, okay, that stinks, but, kind of see it. When you lose A&T, you're like, wait a minute, what is going on? And then, COVID came around and kind of, stole the show a little bit. But now FAMU, they've always talked about, I think 2013, 2014 was the first time that they kind of put out, they might, a feasibility study in the SWAC. And nothing came of it then. But I think one of the things that I got from the Board of Trustees meeting is that this is something that has been on the minds for a lot of people, maybe that have been around for a long time. And so, last year when we're talking about, who's going to be the MEAC Player of the Year? Is it going to be Jermaine Martin? Is it going to be Ryan Stanley? Apparently both North Carolina A&T and FAMU were looking at, maybe their exit strategies for the MEAC. And so, really big blow for both of them. FAMU was once the largest HBCU or one of the largest HBCUs in the country, and North Carolina A&T currently is. So, big blow for them. The last two programs to win FCS playoff games, even though it was a long time ago. Both those guys.
Wally, there's discussions that the SWAC might pick up another member and move to 12. It makes sense that they would want to do that. What do you think if it just turns out to be that SWAC becomes the HBCU super conference in Division I? Is that enough for the culture?
It's enough for the culture if they still have a MEAC, be it the MEAC or a MEAC-like conference. If there's just one, it's cool, it's great, but I mean, I do like having the juxtaposition, especially geographically, of the guys in the Deep South, and then you got the guys on kind of the East Coast. Is it enough? Probably, because if it's, if that's all we got, then we're going to make it enough. So, it'll be enough. But I think the MEAC has to respond. I don't know if they can. I mean, right now, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, this would leave the MEAC at 7 teams.
7 football teams, and then the 2 that don't play. 7 football teams, and we're currently in the last year of the Celebration Bowl contract. So, I mean, do you see the Celebration Bowl getting renewed? One conference having 11, potentially 12, another having 7? Like, I don't. It's already a little bit of a slight disadvantage with the no championship game. So, I mean, I don't know. I think something has to happen. But to directly answer your question, I think we need both. I think you need 2 to compare, to contrast, and then to play. And if you only got one, then we only got one. I really like that.
Wow. Steve, I was thinking, I was talking in a video that you may have already seen now, or you could see soon. I was talking with Ahmad Duramus, former Tuskegee quarterback. And I asked him about his time at Tuskegee. He said, I loved it. He said, I wish we would have played more home games. I said, well, that's how Tuskegee rolls. They're the road show. They're always going and doing classics. I think the SWAC is in a position now, man, where they can move some games to Atlanta, move some games. They have a lot of classic potential now. Not that they're not already capitalizing on it, but with the FAMU brand, they can spread that blanket even further.
Yeah, it's just another light to the fire. Obviously FAMU has been in the MEAC for a long time, but before that they were in the SIAC. So them and Alabama State, competed pretty regularly against each other. And even when they were in the SIC at that time, they kind of played against some of the teams. They've had a rivalry with Southern for a long time, even before they were in the MEAC. So now that becomes a conference rivalry. You got to kind of come over some division hurdles, but then also you look at Grambling. That's another one where FAMU and Grambling are 2 of the biggest brands in HBCU football historically. And then you've also got Jackson State as well. So you got those big 3. You also got Alcorn State, who has really been killing it in SWAC as of late football-wise. They're good. They got Alabama State, which is right down the road from you. They got a nice big new stadium. So they're going to, and the AD talked about it on Wednesday. He said, we're going from putting a kid on a plane in Dover, Delaware, to put him on a bus to Montgomery. Now, that might not be a great selling point for the coaches, but if you're talking about administratively, it's definitely going to be a great selling point for them. Alabama A&M. I mean, there's just so many football-wise, it just makes sense. And then, they have the divisions and things like that. However, they're going to chop it up. So I think there's the argument to be made whether you want to continue to kind of be in third-party places like in Atlanta, or you want to have the games on home and home. Wiley was able to see tally with Southern and Southern and FAMU. They're going to return the favor, depending on how things go in Baton Rouge this year. So I think that's a great atmosphere. It just gives you a lot of flexibility, and it's if you're a fan of the SWAC, this is something that's only going to help your conference and your league.
Wally, let's get to the fun stuff, man. During the presentation, I think the wording was FAMU has superior fans. There's apathy.
Worded in the document that there is fan empathy, which I guess he was referring to the fact that MEAC fans not as boisterous. They're not as many that come out and are loud and proud as the SWAC. I mean, I think we all said it when we were listening to it and we saw them say that. We were like, you can lock this down because you can't come back after talking about your fans like that. And I mean, outside of A&T, who A&T has, loud, proud fans, always.
They got some crazies.
Outside of that, I mean, I know I'm an Eagle, and I feel confident saying this. Like, Central has a great crowd and a great fan base when they're winning. South Carolina State has a great fan base. They're just not that big, and outside of that, I mean, I've never met a Dell State fan in my life. No shots. I apologize, y'all.
Hey, Tanita, I know one. Hey, Tanita.
Shout out to my guy CJ Starchild up there in Delaware, but yeah.
I'm not trying to be a hater, but I mean, when you look at it as a fact without emotions tied to it, I mean, the SWAC's fan base is vastly superior. I mean, I think Steve put me in the SWAC group on Facebook. Shout out to SWAC Sports Central, I believe it's called. Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know it was that serious. I mean, I knew they cared, but like they really, really cared. Like, you say something wrong in there, like you might get a knock.
Yeah, not for the faint of heart over there.
Yeah, and that's the team SWAC group. They told me.
Yeah. That's not rough in the SWAC. I've been in there. It is rough in the SWAC. I'm not in there. I'm not trying to go back in there. And I don't really care about the smoke, but I got put out, and you know what? I'm okay not being in rough in the SWAC.
Yeah, so like it ain't no game.
I go back if they put me in, but I'm not trying to get back in.
That fan empathy line. I mean, it was a drop kick, but I mean, he was keeping it above.
That ether, that make your soul burn slow.
Steve, I wondered, I don't know if you put this in your piece or not, but Trustee Dortch, I think it was, on the call with the Board of Trustees, he did a little dry snitching there. He said, and I hear there's some other people looking to maybe leave the MEAC.
You ain't heard nothing from me. We're on this Zoom, but there might be a couple teams I don't want to say, Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely, they mentioned, I mean, they said it point blank period that instability among membership in the MEAC is a part of the reason why they felt it was time to make this move. Again, you talk about it, you got your A&T, you got your Savannah State, you got your Hampton, even going back to the Winston-Salem State move, which you and Dr. Cavill talked about, really kind of started this slide of teams out of the MEAC. And really, you look at everything that you lost to get to FAMU. You lose Hampton, that's a prestigious school, private school. And kind of in the heart of your conference. It's right by the conference office. Then you lose Savannah State, which is the close game to a South Carolina State, a Bethune-Cookman, a FAMU. And then you lose A&T, who has become your marquee program. They are the measuring stick. They are the ones that, FAMU's been puffing their chest out. And the FAMU's not going to like me saying that they're the measuring stick, but they have been for the last half of a decade. When you lose those teams, you had to figure it was a matter of time before they at least thought about looking somewhere else. And again, now the question is, who's next? And I think everybody's just kind of waiting for that. Who's the next one, the ball to drop? So you hear the folks in Durham. You hear the folks in Durham say, "Hey, the Aggies aren't going to be a weekly a conference opponent. And do we kind of want to do this MEAC thing without them?" Then you look at, Norfolk State, they lost Hampton as a running buddy. Now they've lost A&T. A&T's only going to be able to play so many MEAC schools every year, and that's still a relatively close game. Now FAMU's gone. They got to look at what they're going to do. So it's really set off a domino effect over these last 10 years that, it's just crazy that both the schools are going to leave in the same day.
Yeah, and if the SWAC is indeed looking for 12, looking for one more, who knows where that could come from? Doesn't necessarily have to be an HBCU. A lot of just speculating here on my part, but if it is, who would that possibly be? So a lot of questions remain.
Well, there's a lot of thirst for Big Blue.
That's
Tennessee State University.
Yeah, sorry, TSU. So, see TSU, I got that window where you're just in my wheelhouse, and then I just kind of put it to the side and bring you back.
We're playing the game of horseshoes, though.
Wally, band life. This changes a lot. A lot of that band smoke. We put some extra wet leaves on the fire. That smoke is going to thicken.
The band smoke is a whole different ballgame. You add FAMU to that band structure, any SWAC battle of the bands. I mean, really, they got all these national battle of the bands, Honda, whatever. You can have a SWAC battle of the bands. How many thousands and thousands of people?
Yeah, I think that, and they actually did mention that, and I think the AD actually did mention that on Wednesday. He said, you're cutting down on your travel, and so that's going to allow for the band to maybe go more places. Because I know, us being here in North Carolina, every time FAMU comes, it's always, hey, are they bringing the 100? And other than that, one time, me and Tally ran into each other back in 2014.
Yeah,
we ain't seen 100. So,
yeah.
It's like Bethune as well. Every time Bethune comes, we look to see the band, and even something as small as when me and Steve went to Howard, and Norfolk's band wasn't there. That seems like a short trip. You know what I mean? So, the bands being there is very important. It's very much just like, the wide receivers, we couldn't pick them. In my opinion, it's that important. So, band like.
In the few minutes that we have remaining here, guys, I want to ask you this. If the Celebration Bowl is no longer a thing in the future, and we don't know, we're not speculating, but just hypothetically, if the SWAC does go to 12 and they're looking to be in the FCS playoffs again, would a super strong, beefed up SWAC, unlike myself, would that be a bigger force in the FCS than it currently is right now?
If you look at FAMU's program, they went 9-2 last year. We'll see what they do this year. They got an exciting coach, and all of this is through the lens of football. We haven't even talked about the other sports, but it's their brand has continued to grow. They're in a football crazy state, and so I think that this definitely opens up the lane for that. Especially like you say, if there is no Celebration Bowl, there's going to be the push for it. Of course, there's Southern and Grambling, who always play in that first week of the FCS, and then the SWAC championship game. So the SWAC championship, but even if they don't do the playoffs, the SWAC championship game was a big thing for FAMU as well, because they were talking about, if they get a chance to host it, they can make $500,000 there, and that's an opportunity they don't have in the MEAC. So, they still got to do some restructuring about the playoffs, unless Grambling and Southern are just gonna that's just gonna actually be their championship game. But it's we'll see. It just gives them more flexibility. And right now, how could they not ask for more, and how could they not want more when you get a school like FAMU?
Well, Wally, if the Celebration Bowl became watered down, a potential matchup was watered down, could the SWAC championship be just as big, just as an exciting of a thing?
It could, and it already kind of is. Especially for people in that region. I think it could, especially if that 12th team is Bethune or Tennessee State. If it's Tennessee State, then you really kind of have, you have a powerhouse. You have enough areas represented. Coming as far east as Nashville and Tallahassee, I that's enough for, like you said, like you in Atlanta, that's close enough for you to touch and you to be involved. So, I mean, yeah, it could be. I think it's funny or ironic or whatever the word is that the MEAC has like dominated the Celebration Bowl. I guess A&T has dominated the Celebration Bowl. And they're the ones who are now looking at the weaker, being looked at as the weaker kind of entity. So it's funny. It's one of those things where
it's geography and economics.
You can't judge it.
It's geography and economics really is what has done the MEAC in. I mean, when they started the conference, You know, they were really in the Middle East. They took that risk to get FAMU and to get Bethune-Cookman in, really trying to make a HBCU super conference. And if they would have gotten the money that they thought they were going to get when they went Division I, then maybe that helps keep it together. But since they haven't gotten it, that's why we are where we are today. It's the economy, and then, you know, also just the distance between the schools, like Delaware to Florida is just really long, and schools, it's especially once those schools started breaking up in the middle, it's only a matter of time.
And basketball as well. I remember talking to Howard's coach when they came and played South Carolina State, and I made a comment to him where I was like, "Yeah, you know, that's a long trip down." And he was like, "Yeah, we got another long trip down." Because we were on our way to Florida, and the way he said it, this is Coach Nickelbaby, but the way he said it, he was, "Yeah, bro, we got to get back on this bus. Like, you don't even know what's a long trip, and then we gotta go back home." So yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. Economics and geography, two base level courses. got you caught up in the game. It's exciting, man. It's supposed to be the era of COVID and people scrambling for content, and it's live over here at HBCU Gameday.
Yes,
it's hot.
Okay, guys, just a few minutes left here. I'll let each one of you go around the table here. What is the one thing that you're going to be watching moving forward to see if this move pans out to be as big of excitement and expectation and fulfillment as it appears to be on paper?
You got to watch the MEAC. MEAC has to make a move. Like, you've got to play a card now. You got to play a big card. You got some spades left in your hand. You need to play them, cut hearts, cut clubs. Like, you need some books. Like, I mean, the MEAC has got to make a move. It's got to be a splash. That's what I'm looking at. As far as the SWAC, like, right now they have so many options and so much stuff that they can do and play with that, like, whatever they do is going to be fine. But the MEAC has to make a move. It's a legendary conference. It's an important conference. Like, in my opinion, we need the MEAC. The MEAC needs to be a Division I juxtaposition to the SWAC. So, like, they got to make a move. It's got to be a smart move, but it also has to be a fast move, because, you know, you can't look at 2021 with 7 teams and really still be a banner HBCU conference.
Steve, what will you be watching moving forward?
I'm going to see. I mean, yeah, same thing. You know, what's going to happen? Is anybody in D2 going to make that move? I would put my little dollars that I got in my pocket right now, if I was a betting man, that nobody in D2, especially in the CIAA, is going to make that move up right now with COVID looming over us. And then already it costs $1 million to $2 for that entrance fee, especially with things being shaky among the members that they have right now, and who knows how it's going to shape out. People are saying Virginia State. I don't think so. People are saying Bowie State. I really don't think so. And Winston-Salem State, I know they ain't got the money for it. So there we are. Yeah, it's kind of holding on. LTD.
Black billionaires, Yeezy, Jay-Z, Puffy, Oprah. Now is your time.
Puffy can save the MEAC. He's a Howard grad. Puffy can save the MEAC. Take that.
$1 million today for the vacation. That's a Central Pay weekend.
Well, a lot to watch. There will be a lot to talk about moving forward throughout the summer. It'd be impossible to get it all in today, so we'll leave it right there. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of FAMU headed to the SWAC right here on HBCU Game Day. For Stephen J. Gaither, for Wally Pitt, I'm Tolly Carr. Stick around because we'll have much more to talk about in the days to come. Thanks a lot, guys.